Déjà vu, that fleeting, unsettling feeling where a moment feels like a rerun of something you've lived before. Most of us dismiss it as a quirk of the brain, a momentary glitch. But what if it's more than that? What if déjà vu is a crack in the fabric of reality, a glimpse into a moment you've already experienced in some other version of your life? These four chilling, allegedly true stories from across the United States take déjà vu beyond coincidence, plunging those who experienced it into a world where time, memory, and reality blur into something truly terrifying. In the winter of 2019, I was scraping by in a crumbling apartment building on Maple Street in Cleveland, Ohio. The place was a relic, 5 stories of faded red brick, with hallways that smelled of mildew and flickered with dying fluorescent lights. My roommate, Jake, worked nights at a logistics warehouse on the edge of town, leaving me alone most evenings in our cramped, drafty unit. One freezing November night, I trudged home around 10:30 p.m. after a long shift at a diner. As I climbed the creaky stairwell, a strange smell hit me. Burnt plastic laced with a sharp tang of cheap pine cleaner. It wasn't just odd. It felt like a memory I couldn't pin down, like something I'd smelled in a dream. As I reached the third-floor hallway, a wave of déjà vu slammed into me, so intense it stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't just a vague sense of familiarity. This was granular, vivid, like I'd walked this exact path in this exact moment before. I knew what would happen next, as clearly as if I'd scripted it. The light above would flicker 3 times. A neighbor's TV would blast a sitcom laugh track, and a heavy, metallic thud would echo from the stairwell at the far end of the hall. My heart raced as it unfolded exactly as I'd foreseen. The light flickered. The TV blared. The thud rang out, sharp and hollow. I stood frozen outside my door, keys dangling in my hand, my mind scrambling for an explanation. Had I dreamed this? Was I losing it? Over the next week, these moments multiplied, each one more precise than the last. I know Jake's text would ping my phone at 8:47 p.m., saying he was stuck at work. I'd predict the exact moment the neighbor's cat would yowl at their door. I started carrying a notebook, jotting down every instance, testing myself. Every prediction was right. These weren't guesses. They felt like memories of things that hadn't happened yet. Then the dreams started. Every night, I'd see myself lying in bed, the room lit only by the faint glow of a street lamp through the window. The door would creak open, and Jake would stumble in, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. "Someone's in the building," he'd say, his voice flat, like it was coming through a bad speaker. I'd ask, "Who?" But he'd just stare, his eyes empty. The dream repeated every night, growing sharper, more oppressive. On the 7th night, at 2:19 a.m., I woke to the sound of my door creaking open. My heart stopped. Jake stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dim hallway light, saying those exact words, "Someone's in the building." I grabbed a flashlight and a kitchen knife, my hands shaking as I followed him into the hall. The air felt wrong, too thick, like it was pressing against my skin. Jake pointed to the stairwell, but there was no one. The shadows seemed to pulse, bending in ways they shouldn't. We called the police, who swept the building and found nothing. Back in our apartment, Jake admitted he'd been having the same dreams, word for word, night after night. The déjà vu stopped after that, but the building never felt right again. I catch myself pausing in the hallway, waiting for another thud that never came. 6 months later, I moved out, but I still drive by Maple Street sometimes. Each time, I feel a tug, like the building is calling me back, daring me to walk that hallway again. I can't shake the thought that it's a thin spot in reality, where moments from other lives bleed through, whispering warnings I don't fully understand. I grew up in a sleepy town near Asheville, North Carolina, where the Blue Ridge Mountains loom like silent giants. In the fall of 2021, when I was 17, my younger brother Ethan and I decided to explore a hiking trail deep in the woods. Local kids whispered about an old cabin out there, abandoned for decades, rumored to house strange secrets. Bored and restless, we figured it was the perfect adventure. It was a chilly October afternoon, the forest ablaze with red and gold leaves. We packed water, flashlights, and snacks, telling our mom we'd be back by dusk. The trail was peaceful at first, just the rustle of leaves and the occasional bird call. But about 20 minutes in, a strange sensation crept over me. I knew this trail, though I'd never set foot on it. I could picture a gnarled oak tree with a hollow knot, a rusted sign half buried in the dirt, and a fork in the path veering left. Sure enough, we passed each one, exactly as I'd seen them in my mind. The déjà vu grew stronger, heavier, like a weight on my chest. I started to see a cabin in my head, gray, weathered planks, a sagging porch with a broken railing, and a cracked window on the second floor, draped with dead ivy. I hadn't told Ethan, who was chattering about school rumors, but when the cabin appeared through the trees, my breath caught. It was identical to my vision, down to the chipped green paint on the doorframe. My stomach twisted, urging me to turn back, but Ethan was already bounding toward the porch, eager to explore. The door was ajar, creaking as Ethan pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the musty scent of decay. Broken furniture cluttered the rooms, and a rickety staircase led to the second floor. The silence was suffocating, like the house was holding its breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Without thinking, I blurted out, "I've been here before." Ethan stopped, raising an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" he asked, half laughing. I told him I remembered this place, the cracked fireplace, the faded floral wallpaper, even a faint creak from upstairs like someone stepping on a loose floorboard. As if on cue, we heard it, a soft, deliberate creak from above. Ethan's grin faded. He dared me to go up, but my legs felt like lead. After a tense argument, he decided to check it out himself, climbing the stairs while I stayed at the top, clutching the banister. He approached a door at the end of the hall, slightly open, and pushed it wider. For a moment, he stood frozen. Then he screamed, a sound I'd never heard from him, and bolted back, nearly shoving me down the stairs. "Run," he shouted. We tore out of the cabin, sprinting through the woods until our lungs burned. When we finally stopped, doubled over and gasping, I demanded, "What did you see?" Ethan's face was pale. "There was someone up there," he said. "A figure by the window, just standing there with long, gray hair. It didn't move." He swore he wasn't pranking me, and even now, years later, he sticks to his story. I believe him. The déjà vu was too vivid, the creak too real. Something in that cabin was waiting, and I'm certain my strange memories saved us from finding out what it wanted. In January 2022, I was living in a quiet suburb outside Boise, Idaho, where winters blanket the roads in snow. One night, around 1:15 a.m., I was driving home from a friend's house after a late movie. The roads were slick, and I was approaching a notorious intersection on Route 12. 4 stop signs, no traffic lights, and a reputation for deadly crashes. Locals called it the crossroads of bad luck. As I neared it, a heavy, sinking feeling settled in my chest. It wasn't just nerves. It was like stepping into a memory I hadn't lived yet. I slowed down, though I had the right of way, my hands trembling on the wheel. Then, out of nowhere, a red SUV barreled through the stop sign on my right, missing my car by inches. If I hadn't braked, it would have smashed into me. I pulled over, heart hammering, watching the SUV's taillights vanish into the snow. But what shook me wasn't just the near miss. I remembered the crash, the screech of metal, the shatter of glass, the airbag slamming into my chest. It felt as real as if it had happened, but my car was untouched. I tried to write it off as stress. It was a rough year, pandemic lockdowns, long hours at work. But the déjà vu kept coming. A few nights later, at a gas station, I knew the clerk would fumble a quarter before it happened. I knew a woman in a blue coat would cross the street with her dog before she appeared. It was like I was living moments twice, once in my mind and again in reality. Then the dream started. Every night, I'd see Route 12, my car crumpled, my face bloodied, a jagged cut across my forehead. I'd hear my own ragged breathing, feel the cold seeping into my bones. Each dream was more vivid, more suffocating. By the fifth night, I couldn't take it anymore. I swore I'd avoid that intersection, taking a 15-minute detour via the highway instead. The next morning, a coworker texted me about a fatal crash at Route 12, same time I'd normally drive through. Same make and model as my car. A different driver, but the same grim outcome. I haven't had déjà vu like that since, but every time I drive at night, especially on snowy roads, I feel a prickle of unease. Was I remembering my own death in another timeline? Did some part of me rewrite the script at the last second? I've read about near-death experiences where people recall events that never happened, always tied to a brush with disaster. Maybe déjà vu isn't just a glitch. Maybe it's a warning, a fragment of another life where things didn't end so well. Before I landed a desk job in tech support, I worked the graveyard shift at Willow Creek Care Home, a weathered facility in rural Oregon, in 2020. The building was old, with sagging floors and walls stained by years of neglect. Most residents were elderly but stable, though a few had dementia. One woman, Mrs. Clara, stood out. At 89, she was sharp as a tack, with a quiet kindness and a habit of keeping to herself. On her nightstand sat a faded photo of a young girl. Her daughter, she said, though no family ever came to visit. My routine was predictable. Midnight rounds, hourly checks, paperwork in the dim glow of the nurse's station. Most nights were quiet, but Clara would sometimes be awake, staring at the ceiling, humming a low, mournful tune that sent shivers down my spine. One night, around 2:30 a.m., I found her sitting up in bed, her eyes wide and piercing. "You've been here before, haven't you?" she said, her voice calm but heavy with meaning. I laughed nervously, assuming it was just late-night confusion. "Tonight's different," she added. "You'll see." The next night, she said the same thing, word for word, her gaze locked on mine. The déjà vu hit me hard. Not just her words, but the way the room felt, the faint hum of the heater, the shadow of her photo frame on the wall. I started noticing other moments. I'd know when a coworker would drop their pen or when a residence call button would buzz. I wrote it off as exhaustion, but Clara's words gnawed at me. On the third night, Clara was gone. She'd passed away in her sleep at 2:10 a.m. By the time I did my rounds, her room was empty, the bed stripped, her belongings packed away. I couldn't stop thinking about her words. Curious, I dug through old staff logs in the office. What I found chilled me. Years earlier, other night staff had reported similar incidents with Clara. She predicted a nurse's break time down to the minute, even called a new aide by name before meeting them. A 2016 entry read, "Clara told me, 'You'll leave soon, dear,' and I was let go 3 days later for budget cuts." I don't believe in the supernatural, but Clara seemed caught in something, a loop, a glitch, where she saw moments before they happened. Even now, working in a bright office far from Willow Creek, I get waves of déjà vu. When they hit, I stop and listen, half expecting to hear Clara's humming. I've met others who worked at that care home, and without prompting, they've shared stories of strange dreams or residents predicting things they shouldn't know. One swore a patient warned her about a fire alarm days before it malfunctioned. I just nod, but inside I wonder, is déjà vu a message, a whisper from someone like Clara, reaching across time to warn us we've been here before, and it didn't end well?